Hey Adni fam, it is Anthony. I am so excited for this Adni Huddle podcast episode because we are joined with Andrew Craig, who is a former travel nurse turned recruiter at Lucid Staffing Solutions, which I just think is so awesome. I feel like it's not every day you see a recruiter in healthcare staffing that was formerly a traveler themselves. So I'm really, really excited to get to know you more, Andrew, and hear all about your story. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a real pleasure. So I'm thrilled that you had a chance to invite me.
Absolutely. And I know you also love to write about AI and like all this really innovative technology in the recruiting space. So I'm definitely excited to kind of get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, let's
Um,
do it.
but yeah, maybe to just like set the stage, would love if you could tell us about yourself, tell us about your background, and then maybe share with us like how you went from the bedside to your role now as a recruiter.
Yeah, absolutely. Short story is I've been a nurse for 10 years. And I travel nurse with my wife, Sarah, who's also a nurse. We work together on the same unit, same schedule. We were both step down nurses. And on our honeymoon in Scotland, we decided that once we got back to the University of Iowa, we did not want to stay staff nurses anymore. And ran into a traveler, talked to the recruiter, and really the rest was history a couple weeks later. And I transitioned from nursing to recruitment, I'd say in stages. First, after travel nursing, I went to ambulatory from acute care, and I was lucky enough to become a supervisor of a very large float team. And that really kind of changed my paradigm a little bit from being a bedside nurse to into the administrative life. And so did that for a couple years.
Cool.
Hopped on the COVID train for a little while, and it was at that moment I think that really was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I was lucky enough to have a recruiter that was a nurse, and
Oh,
so I
wow.
picked her brain, and she got me in. Essentially, she talked to her bosses, and I interviewed, and really the rest is history. I've been a recruiter for 2 years now, almost 2 years.
Wow, that's amazing. Such a cool story.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like your background as a former traveler impacts your day to day a lot, just because you lived on the other side of the recruiter nurse relationship. Like, how do you feel like your background as a nurse has now impacted your role as a recruiter?
I think it impacts every single conversation I have. It's because uh, I see myself in the situations that they are in at the hospital because I've lived it myself.
Yeah.
I can't uh, uh, understand all aspects of people's lives, in terms of like I've never worked NICU, I never worked the OR, but I understand the nursing experience and
Yeah.
what that entails. And so when a person comes to me with a challenge, I can really see it from both sides here. And I think that affects my ability to support them perhaps on another level than perhaps a recruiter that doesn't have clinical experience.
Absolutely, yeah, because you can also just understand all the clinical stuff, all the things that nurses deal with at the bedside, which we know is it's a lot at times, pretty much all the time actually. But
Yes.
I think, yeah, from my perspective as a nurse myself, and also just talking to travel nurses, I feel like being able to have that trust with your recruiter and being able to know that they're being transparent with you, they have your back, they want you to be successful. I feel like that trust could just be so much more easily developed to like nurse to nurse. I feel like when you talk to another nurse, even you just kind of have this baseline respect for each other and like trust because I feel like you guys both understand it. So I'm sure that is the case for you and the relationship you're able to build with your travelers.
I would like to think so. I think I have a good rapport with the people that I care for as a recruiter. And I say care for because in some respects, what I do as a recruiter is very similar to what I did for patients at the bedside. And so having that shared experience really, I'd like to think that people have a little more trust and a better relationship with me because we've been through it together, essentially.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, that's a really good segue into learning more about Lucid.
Yeah.
because one thing that's always stood out to me about Lucid is that, you know, it's founded by previous travelers. It's definitely a big part of the agency and kind of the ethos that you guys have. So, would love if you could just tell us a
It
little bit about
is.
Lucid and what makes Lucid stand out.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's a big reason why I switched to Lucid, was for that very reason. I think that sets us apart from most, if not all, agencies out there. Is every recruiter is a clinician. The owners are a married duo, Daniel and Suzanne. Daniel being a former rad tech and Suzanne being a former CVICU nurse. And so that really drives all of our decisions when it comes to how we approach recruitment. And I think we find a really nice balance between taking care of the facility and the client, and also taking care of our travelers as well. And I really think I'm a little biased here, but I think we're going to be seeing more and more of Lucid here in the travel industry. Here in the very near future as a result of that.
No, absolutely. I feel like it's such an innovative way to run an agency. I feel like it really is the best way to do it because, you know, in a way, recruiters are really a team with the clinician, and being able to have those shared perspectives and experiences is, as we just talked about, so impactful. So I just love everything about Lucid, and I love what y'all stand for. I'm curious to know a little bit more about your interest in technology. And you definitely write and share a lot about kind of tips for recruiters and how AI is coming into the industry. Would love
Yes.
kind of where that passion of yours came from and how it's grown.
So I think I've been always this way. I've been sharing knowledge and tips and tricks since before I was a nurse. As a pre-nursing student, I was really involved in the All Nurses forum for years, and I was sharing guides. And you can even, if you dig deep enough, you'll find my stuff lingering down in those forums somewhere. And when I became a recruiter, I realized that there is very, if any, public sharing of knowledge in the travel healthcare space. It is very secretive. And you talk about transparency. There needs to be more open discussion about the processes of agencies so that people feel comfortable traveling with them. And so I really like educating. I was a preceptor, I was a supervisor, as you know, and the education that comes with that. And so I've always had a passion for sharing knowledge, and because I'm a recruiter, no better time to share recruitment tips on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. No, I agree. I feel like that education is not something you always hear about, or just like the behind the scenes of it all. And that's something I've tried to like demystify even in this podcast, is just showcasing, you know, what kind of goes on behind the scenes and what even is going on in the market and how that dictates the rates that travelers are seeing. And obviously those rates are very different than they were, you know, 2 years ago in the pandemic. So,
Oh, for sure.
yeah.
For sure, that's a huge pain point right now. Is we are regularly talking about that, and I can relate. When you go, and I was making great money during the pandemic in Iowa,
Yeah.
and now we're returning back to similar rates when I started traveling 6 and 7 years ago. So it's a painful adjustment.
Yeah, no, it totally is, especially when I feel like there was that buzz. So now, especially for I feel like new travelers that I talk to, like that are just entering, they have this kind of idea of what it's going to be, and then when it's not that, I think it's just like a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, justifiably.
Yeah, yeah, and so most people, the first thing they think, the reason why they uproot their lives is because they wanted to make it financially worth it. But there's more value to traveling than simply the money that one makes. And I learned that as a traveler because I saw the growth in my ability as a nurse over time. I became stronger, more knowledgeable, well-rounded, being able to adapt to unique situations. And also the irreplaceable memories and experiences that I had with my wife all over the country.
Yeah.
And I've spent all that money that I made during COVID. I bought a house, and I got to go do some cool stuff. But at the end of the day, I'll always have that experience and knowledge that came from traveling. And so I would encourage folks to consider all of the benefits of travel beyond the money, even though I can totally respect the fact that at the end of the day, you have to pay your bills and make financial sense.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. There's so much value add to like the traveler experience beyond just the paycheck.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, the memories and also all the people you meet. Like, I just feel like I've never actually accepted a travel nurse contract, but I've become friends with a lot of travel nurses and travel healthcare workers. And it's like, they're like the most fun, kind of adventurous group, so welcoming, and really just kind of form communities in the different kind of hubs that the travelers exist within.
Oh, for sure. We have friends to this day that were our traveler buddies.
Yeah.
I loved going to hospitals with a lot of travelers. Usually that wasn't a great sign for the hospital. However,
Right.
the people that you met, like there were many instances where we were running entire units with just travelers, and you think about that.
Wow.
That's not ideal for patient care, but sometimes it is what it is. You got to keep things going, got to keep the care going and take care of the patients. But there's definitely a cool vibe that tends to come with travelers.
Yeah. And on that note, I'm curious if you have any advice for anyone listening who maybe is considering traveling, but they're new to it, they're a little scared, they're not really sure where to start. What would be some of the advice you'd give to a healthcare worker out there that's thinking about traveling?
Well, I have to say the amount of information that's out there has exploded over the last 5 to 10 years, and so there's going to be no shortage of it. I've seen a lot of travelers that have started to create their own social media accounts and sharing knowledge that way. So that's where I'd start is if you don't have a traveler buddy on your unit, I see a ton of folks on TikTok and Instagram and even YouTube that are sharing knowledge. I would also consider having maybe a half a dozen recruiters that you talk to in the beginning and really get a sense of, is this someone that I'm willing to work with on a long-term basis? Because this type of recruitment is different than, say, perm placement, where you're kind of married to that recruiter for the length of your assignments. And so listen to your instincts, and if you find a recruiter that's is not vibing or jives with your personality, you're just not really getting a good feeling for them, move on and find someone until you do. I would also I guess I would caution folks too. There is a lot of misinformation that lives on social media as well.
Yeah.
And so they're particularly as it pertains to agencies and recruiters. And so I guess I would take some of that with a grain of salt. And once you find a recruiter or a couple of them that you trust, or a traveler that you trust, I would put stock into perhaps what they say, because at the end of the day, we're here to help people. And so I think that would help the new person maybe feel a little more comfortable with the process.
100%. Or just go to Lucid Staffing Solutions.com to start there too.
Obviously, I mean, you said that you haven't done an assignment yet. I mean, I know you're not very busy, with all the whole, Adni and all. When you find some free time,
there you go.
Find you, an assignment. We got you.
I love it. To loop back to kind of like the technology in the healthcare staffing space, I'm specifically just curious to hear your thoughts on like AI in this space. I think I've been really interested to just see this kind of new era of like automation and AI to, of course, enhance recruiter productivity, enhance, productivity throughout the entire team. But I think with that, I think there still is this necessity for that human bond that's created between the traveler and the recruiter. And like, that is just something that I don't think AI will ever be able to take away. So curious to hear the thoughts on AI and kind of where you see that headed in the next few years.
Wow. I think that AI is going to totally change our lives, both professionally and personally, in ways that are unforeseen right now. what I learned as a recruiter very quickly is how many manual, mundane tasks fill my day, and how that takes away from what I could provide to clinicians. And it same token goes for when I was a bedside nurse. How much of my day was filled with administrative or charting
Yeah.
stuff away from the patient? Half of my day, probably. And so what I foresee in general is a lot of innovation in that area where we can free up time to provide a better experience for, say, patients or clinicians, because AI and automation has replaced that task. And
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think it's really tempting to figure out how to replace human interaction with a technology. I think the thought, the way it should go is it should enhance it rather than replace it, because
Yeah.
I think we ultimately need, as cool as AI and automation is, I think we need that. I think we need the human touch. This conversation that you and I are having, the conversations I have with travelers, I think there's a small percentage of people that just don't need that. Like, just don't call me, text me. Fine, cool with that. But I think the
Right.
majority of us still need to talk to each other just because it feeds, our soul as humans.
Yeah. No, I would 100% agree. I totally hear you on all of those tedious tasks, and I definitely am so excited by how I feel like technology is entering this space in healthcare staffing for clinicians. Like,
Yes.
all of these things can definitely, be a benefit. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think you can never take away that relationship and that trust and that rapport that's built. And I love how you said you can enhance it, but it's still, I think, it's like foundationally there, kind of human to human. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of watch AI continue to evolve. It's rapidly moving. It's kind of hard to keep up with these days, I feel like.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
When ChatGPT first came onto the market a year and some change ago, and I realized the power, I just kind of felt like I had a little crystal ball, and I thought, oh my God, our lives are about to change. And already in a year, I don't think it's fully gotten to the masses yet. Like you and I having this conversation, we're going to laugh about it in a year from now, because we're going to think, haha, they didn't know what they're talking about a year. You know what I mean?
Right,
we are like
right.
so early adopters here that it's going to be remarkable. I was just on a staffing summit today. I caught a little bit of it, and most of it had something to do with AI, because agencies are seeing the power of it.
100%. And I guess on that note of, thinking about the future and trends, like, I'm curious to know, in your perspective, someone who's now been a traveler, been a recruiter, where do you kind of see like the healthcare staffing market, specifically for like traveling, kind of headed in the next few years? Like, do you feel like the market has stabilized at this point? Do you feel like there's still some more evolution to go? Or is it just hard to predict in general?
Well, I really don't think that the need will ever change. I think if anything, the need is going to increase. There's talks about a whole generation of nurses retiring or leaving the profession. We saw that huge reduction in COVID.
Yeah.
And I think the need for travelers is only going to increase over time as a result of that, because we can't replace what we're losing fast enough. And so that's one piece. I think that the offerings of agencies are going to change. I bet you we're going to see more PRN, for instance, because people don't want to commit to a full-time job, or they're burnt out. And so I could foresee a lot of that. And more technology, more mobile apps, more automations when it comes to communication with clinicians, and maybe even more control on the clinician side through the use of AI. That's just kind of speculating here, but
That's interesting.
yeah, but I think, at the end of the day, hospitals will never have enough staff. They'll always work short, and so staffing is just going to keep on growing. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. There's so many different circumstances too where having a traveler is a benefit. And, you know, there's so much going on in just nurse exodus and nurses feeling unvalued, unsupported. And I think for me, I'm personally really excited by hopefully technology that can kind of continue to be brought to market that really helps the clinician experience and helps clinicians feel valued and supported, because I know we're both nurses. We've both felt that pain point of not feeling valued, feeling unsupported. So yeah, it's really exciting to kind of see technology be implemented into these spaces. And then on a personal note, I'm curious, Andrew, just like what you're most excited about for your kind of next few years as a recruiter, kind of, you know, what's kind of most exciting to you right now?
I love being involved in the AI space. I think that there's so much untapped, exciting changes, and so being on the forefront of that. I mean, I'm just one random dude on the internet, but at least being somewhat in tune with that is really exciting. I don't think I'll be in the recruitment capacity forever. I think that I'll end up growing within Lucid and wherever that takes me. But for now, it works really well, and I'd like to think I'm pretty good at it. Yeah, I think I'll continue sharing, kind of helpful tips and tricks on AI as it pertains to the travel healthcare space.
I love that. Yeah, the education piece is so exciting for what you're doing, because I feel like even as a nurse, like not just as a nurse, as healthcare workers, like the healthcare industry as a whole, I feel like is or less educated maybe about AI and the future of AI compared to, you know, folks who are living in it every day, and, you know, using it every day. So it's really exciting to have like a nurse and a recruiter be able to kind of educate the community about these kind of quickly evolving technologies. So kudos to you for doing that. And I'm excited to keep following along. With the kind of last question of the podcast here, and then happy to open it up if there's anything else you'd like to share.
Sure.
One thing that this podcast is kind of all about is just about unity in healthcare and rehumanizing healthcare staffing. That's something that I personally like really strongly believe in. Adni, kind of our whole journey. So curious from your perspective as a nurse and as a recruiter, why you believe that rehumanizing healthcare staffing is more important now than maybe ever before.
That is a great question. There's obviously something missing. We can feel it internally, and so I'm sure you've heard this before, but it has to come down to the day-to-day interactions that we have amongst each other, the relationship that you have, the communication you have with people. And I've noticed that, there's certainly a reason why I left bedside care, is because not only was my back broken, not literally, but also just like my spirits. Part of the reason why I left nursing. And so I think that the leaders of healthcare need to figure out how to fix that. And I wish I had good answers, but it has to start with the way we treat each other. And I recognize that the work of the nurse and of healthcare workers, it takes a toll on each other. For sure. I'm definitely a different Andrew than I was 10 years ago when I was a brand new nurse, because it took a toll on me.
Right.
And so that affects our relationships with each other. And so when you talk about like lateral violence and toxic behavior, and that has to change if we want to rehumanize healthcare. And I think that comes in all fronts. It comes from the interaction between managers and their staff on the unit. It comes from the directors and the C-suite of the hospital, and it trickles down. Because that is, if without changing that, without fixing that, we're just going to see the same problems over and over again. And I wish sometimes I feel like the problem is so massive that I don't even know if it's solvable. So maybe it's on the individual to kind of figure out a way to cope with the state of healthcare, and just hopefully you enjoy it and stick around, because we're going to need your care here soon enough,
I appreciate you sharing that, Andrew. I completely resonate with what you said about the problem just feeling so big. And sometimes it just feels so overwhelming, because it's like you read all these statistics, you're on LinkedIn, you just see all this. And, some of the technologies and things that can solve the problem or solve a part of them, it just takes a lot of time to be implemented, and it takes a lot of time for healthcare to kind of adapt solutions in general. So I really resonate with what you said, and I think it is really just about that, like, human to human connection and treating each other as best as we can, and kind of having that we're all in this together mentality. Yeah. I think that's also really reflects Lucid and the approach you guys are taking. And I'm personally so excited about it. So excited to see you guys grow. So excited to keep supporting.
Appreciate that.
So congrats. And
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to share? I'd love if you could share like where people can find you, especially if there's any kind of potential travelers listening that would like to get in touch with you.
Well, I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, so you just look up Andrew Craig Recruiter and you're going to find me, no doubt. As far as Lucid, you could always go to stafflucid.com. That's our website. You can check us out there. And I think you'll be seeing here in the near future my involvement online increase. I've got some fun stuff planned to share, not only with recruiters but also with travelers. I think there's one thing that I think that there is a huge need for is candid, open conversations about agencies. And I know I just see these conversations online, and I know people are craving it. I hope to give a voice to the agency side to maybe resolve some of that misinformation, but also shed the light on our processes to show people that, you know what, most of us on the recruitment side are here to help people, just like clinicians are helping patients at the bedside. Even though it may not seem like it, I can assure you that that's the case.
I'm so excited for that. Let me know how I can support. I'm ready to share it. It's awesome. So needed. Yeah. And literally amazing that you have the nursing travel nurse perspective as well. So I think that really helps build that trust as we talked about. So congrats on everything, Andrew. So excited to follow along, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.